Good evening. Today is August 6th, 2022. I'm Robert Crescione.
I'm John Gabsis.
And you are tuned in to America in Danger and the 90th week of the Great Reset, insurrection, destruction of the USA.
Well, that's, I'd probably qualify by saying the 90th week of the overt in your face.
There you go.
Because I think we're in about the 9,000th week of, I have to do the math on that, but it's been a lot of weeks, a lot of years this has been ongoing.
Absolutely. Now, we are in primary season in some states.
Yep.
And very interesting. I thought what went on in Arizona was, again, very interesting.
Particularly interesting set of results.
Absolutely is. Carrie Lake, a Trump endorsee, running, and they had the vote, the election. And of course, they do the mail-in still.
Right.
Quite a large percentage of their voting is done mail-in.
Yeah.
And of course, Arizona is one of the states. States do it two ways. They either count the day of votes first, or they count the mail-in votes first. Now, Arizona is one of the states that counts the mail-in ballots first.
Before the in-person voting.
Now, that's by law in Arizona.
Right.
That's how they do it. So what they did, they counted those votes up. Then they started counting the day of votes. And ends up that they had not completely counted the mail-in votes.
That's convenient.
Oh, absolutely. You got to keep some in reserve, because if you don't like the results,
you need to be able to.
You have to be able to have some that you can say, oh, wait, we've got more here. We found this box under the stairs in the back.
Ever since Al Franken won his Minnesota Senate race because they found a trunkload of ballots.
Yes.
And they didn't get called on it. To me, that's like any kind of theft operation where the person gets away with it one time, like time card theft at a company. They get away with it that one time, they don't get really called on it, and next thing you know, well, I'll do this again, and before you know it, it's endemic to their activity. And I think that's what's a good bit of what's happened here. There's always been a fair amount of stealing,
right,
especially on the part of the left and the Democrats. But now they're just in your face with it, and they've organized and structured the laws now. They've tried to where it's just baked into the cake that they can kind of get the result they want.
Right.
Most of the time.
And it used to be you went down and you voted on election day.
That's right.
Everybody went down. You made arrangements. If you didn't get down, well, you didn't vote.
That's right.
And that really is not a significant issue.
It's not,
because people who have the wherewithal to go down and vote are the people who should be deciding these elections.
That's correct.
People that you have to pay, that you have to prod, that you have to put on a bus, that you have to grab as they're coming out of church, that you have to go in and help them fill out their absentee ballot.
They're not the right people to be voting.
That's right.
I'm sorry. I know that probably sounds really elitist and bad, but I think I'm going to augment that statement with a reminder to people: voting is not liberty.
That's right.
Constitutional liberty is liberty.
Exactly.
And they've conflated the idea that, everybody has to be voting, regardless of their knowledge of the issues or of their mental acuity or their ability to understand basic civics. We got to get them to the polls. And vote. Well, that's great for tyrants, because it's very easy to manipulate those kinds of people and to get them to the polls to vote the way they want them to vote. And mail-in voting and internet voting and motor voter and 10 weeks of early voting and 10 weeks of post-election day voting and just perpetual voting, boy, those are all mechanisms for fudging and finagling and massaging the result till you get what you want.
Yep. It started out with, well, let's have early voting.
Yeah.
Woo-hoo. Okay. Well, yeah. Most people said, okay, yeah, well, that'll be a little more convenient. I won't have to take off election day to go down and vote, what have you. But really, the reason they put that in was they said, well, that gives us a longer period of time to solicit people to vote.
That's right.
That was the intent.
That's right.
Don't ever think it was to be convenient for the people who really should be voting. It was to aid in swaying elections.
Because frankly, I know a lot of people would never change their vote no matter what, but unfortunately, a lot of people would. I think that's a flaw baked into the system right there, is that you've got people who are so easily manipulated. But if you're going to have that set of circumstances, then early voting denies those people the opportunity to make their final decision, because there might be some new data that comes on board, like, Hunter Biden laptop revelation or something that might make them change their mind. So I'm kind of opposed to early voting in general.
As am I. And
Yeah,
as
you either get there on election day and vote, or you don't.
Or you don't.
You know,
like,
tough.
You know, and I'm gonna cite the European countries. You know, because the left is so fond of citing Europe as an example of how we should be.
They're so sophisticated.
Oh yes, they're above reproach when it comes to all of
They're
these.
so humane in every way.
Absolutely. Well, over there, it's like you go vote on election day. Otherwise, you don't vote.
Right.
Period. You know, and the mail-in balloting, well, I'm going to tell you what, if you don't have the wherewithal to get down to vote, again, I'm going to say it, you shouldn't be voting.
Right, in 90% of cases.
In 90% of cases. I believe in absentee ballots.
Yep.
If you're sent out of town to work, you know you're not going to be available
That's
to vote.
right.
I don't have a problem with that, but this mass mailing of ballots, that's corrupt.
Well,
That's
the problem
criminal.
is the more hands and the more entities these votes pass through, and the more handling and the chain of custody complications, the more opportunities there is for theft and grift. And the idea that these poll workers and these, I mean, first of all, if you're involved in that, I don't think people just volunteer to be poll workers because they have some neutral, nonpartisan, altruistic, sense of wanting to participate in democracy. I think they're activists.
Yeah.
I think most of them have a very partisan view. And so the idea that these people aren't probably putting their fingers on the scale whenever there's an opportunity, I think is naive.
It is. Well, we've got the videos of the fellow taking, and this is in numerous cases, taking the stack of counted ballots out, putting right back in the machine to be counted again.
Right.
We know that goes on. Those things, if you're day of voting only, well, those things are hard to accomplish a big push, a big
Well, that's
steal.
the thing. I mean, in-person voting ensures that, look, the person's there. It's a pretty simple mechanism.
Yeah.
There's still room for cheating, obviously.
Sure.
But it's a much more pure process.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And you sent me a great article that democracy is not the antidote to tyranny.
Right.
It's really not. And I cannot believe Tucker Carlson, of all people, doubled down on this the other day. He was talking about democracy and that the will of the majority should rule out most of the time.
Right.
And that's not the case.
It isn't. It's not really how this society and this constitutional republic are structured. It's structured, and I don't understand Tucker's approach there, because I know, with 100%. Metaphysical, ontological certitude, as what's his name used to say. What was the guy? I can't remember. I know he knows better. I know he knows the argument and understands the.
Sure, he does.
So for some reason, Tucker Carlson has this. I don't know if it's a strategy or a philosophy, but he repeatedly goes down this our democracy path and talks about the will of the people and the democracy. He never once says. He doesn't even say democratic republic, which is sort of a mealy mouth, sort of wiggle room kind of way for some of these people to get that in there without actually having to. But they still want to say democracy. Yeah. It's not a democracy; it's a constitutional republic. Huge difference, and it's civics 101 for the United States and its history.
It is.
Okay, and I don't understand Tucker Carlson's approach there, because he's pretty solid on most of these exposés and these issues that he pursues. So I don't get that one at all. I really that's a mystery. I would love it if somebody could afford some insight there. I know he's been asked a question. We're not the only people who think this way. In fact, I'd say half the voting public have some inkling that but democracy is definitely not the antidote to liberty.
No, and we're seeing that
tyranny.
Tyranny. Liberty is
actually it is the antidote to liberty as well.
It
is anti-libertarian ultimately. Democracy is.
And the left looks at liberty as a problem.
That's right.
Yeah, as a toxic disease out there.
Ask yourself why the left loves the phraseology around democracy, because democracy is fundamentally 5 wolves and a sheep deciding what's for dinner. It's the consummate. Yep. It's the easiest way to implement tyranny. The founders were explicit on this in their writings that democracies are short in their lives and violent in their end because they ultimately lead to tyranny. Okay.
Yeah. If you want to see a prime example of democracy right now, today in the U.S. Senate, They're trying to push this Build Back Better garbage. No, I'm sorry. This time it's the Inflation Reduction Act.
Yeah, talk about a euphemism.
Which is just more spending. You don't spend to reduce inflation. I'm sorry. That's the problem in the first place, because government spending is the equivalent of printing money.
Right.
So you don't print more money and dilute the value of the existing money to reduce inflation. That's an idiotic and shallow description of that. But what's going on right now, they're going to pass this bill in reconciliation.
Yeah.
All right. Reconciliation is simple majority. This is will of the majority. This is true democracy in action.
Right. Within the confines of the Senate, but the Senate has a filibuster rule, and they normally have to get 60 votes.
Exactly.
Out of the 100 in order for major legislation to move forward. And they wanted to bypass that because they want to be able to do it on a simple majoritarian basis.
Exactly. And that, my friends, is democracy in action. And guess who's getting screwed in this whole thing?
I got an idea.
Yeah, the public,
That's
who
right.
gets the short end of the stick every time politicians get together. And when they talk about, oh, we're going to do this through reconciliation, what they're saying is that, well, we're going to use one individual, Manchin or Sinema in this case, to foist this upon the American people and steal more of your wealth.
Right. And, I don't know. I mean, the really invidious thing about this whole process is that they're using reconciliation at all. I mean, reconciliation is a budget process.
Yes.
That's a process by which budgets are passed, and they have very disingenuously and dishonestly come up with this mechanism for getting major pieces of legislation through using a process which is intended solely to get budget items through.
Mm-hmm.
That's dishonest. They're liars, they're thieves. Joe Manchin revealed himself to be nothing more than another grifter, which I knew that. I mean, how can you be a Democrat and not be I mean, you've got to have a certain high element of grift in his whole personal makeup to begin with to even be a Democrat, frankly. But the Republicans aren't much better.
No, they're not.
They really...
They're not, because, you can thank Mitch McConnell for this.
Right.
He cut the deal with Schumer on this whole thing. He did the whole Lucy and the football thing.
Right.
Knowing that he would get plausible denial. Oh, darn, I was fooled again. Well, old Mitch is not that foolish.
No, he's
I can
not.
tell you that right now.
Right.
He knows exactly what he's doing, and he knows exactly what he did, because this is his modus operandi.
Well, to kind of circle back to our starting discussion, the primary results in the various states, I think some people are starting to wake up to some of this, because I think
they are.
I think the results that we saw, I guess this past week, I guess it was on Tuesday. I guess that's traditionally voting day. Kari Lake won her bid for, what's she running for, governor?
Governor of Arizona,
yeah. And I think her opponent in the Republican primary was kind of a typical sort of, middle-of-the-road rhino type.
Yeah, exactly.
And now, Kari Lake, she's a former TV reporter. She's a former journalist.
I know it, yeah.
Now, some people claim that, she has some bad history objecting to Trump's presidency at one point. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I don't trust any of them, frankly.
Nor do I.
But I've seen enough sort of cathartic footage really and have really enjoyed where she's taken it to some of these people.
Yeah.
And so she talks the talk anyway. We'll see if she walks the walk.
Oh, that's exactly right.
I think she may ultimately win.
Yeah.
Okay, so she's sort of a bellwether win. Mm-hmm. There were several that I think indicate that, what were the numbers? I think you said that out of all the different candidates that Trump has endorsed, throughout the entire political history?
Yeah, he's got 197 wins and 14 losses. Now, I haven't verified those numbers. I was just giving those numbers shortly before the show.
Right.
That's, even if it's 150 wins and 50 losses.
That's all right. That's a pretty good record.
That's pretty good. I wish my stockbroker would hit that percentage there.
Right, that's all right.
But,
of course, the one I'm waiting for, I think this will turn out the way we want. I'm waiting for the Liz Cheney primary in Wyoming.
As am I, which is, I think, 10 days out?
Yeah, all indications are she's going down in flames hard.
Yeah.
But I think the point you were going to make about the Kari Lake thing had to do with the mail-in voting, right?
Yeah.
Didn't they make some claims that didn't add up, that didn't make any sense?
Yeah, absolutely. During the Trump-Biden election, they kept saying, well, you know what, Democrats tend to vote early and mail-in.
Yeah.
So when the mail-ins are counted, they'll be slanted toward the Democratic candidate. Well, Kerry Lake is a Republican.
Right.
It was a Republican primary. There were no Democrats voting.
Right.
In that,
So
or very
strictly,
few
right. So
Democrats
it's
voting
strictly
in it.
the spectrum of Republicans.
And they tried to say that, oh, well, you know what? They're leaning heavily toward her opponent in the mail-in ballot.
Right, which makes no sense.
No sense whatsoever. And then on top of that, they held ballots, mail-in ballots. Oh, well, we haven't quite finished counting them.
Is that an open primary there? Because I know there was some stratagem on the part of Democrats to participate in
try and participate.
So
yeah.
I suppose if you really were getting kind of hung up on that argument, you could say, well, what we mean is that all the Democrats who are voting in the Republican primary, they tend to vote mail-in,
Yeah.
and they tend to vote. Yeah, well, whatever.
I just don't believe that that's a very successful strategy, because that takes you out of voting in your own primary.
That's right.
You know, that eliminates your ability to vote for the candidate that you do want to get in.
Well,
there.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say she won a lot bigger than the numbers indicate, because, you know,
yes, I agree.
When a race is close and our side wins by a little bit, that means they couldn't quite steal it enough.
And Maricopa County, there's controversy there.
They
refuse to do some things. And
That's right.
You know, their whole thing. If the state, if their SBI or whatever their state bureau of investigation may be, doesn't investigate Maricopa County and puts the people in jail, the whole state's corrupt.
Well, all these people are corrupt, fundamentally. And it's a shame, because really,
It is.
There was
It
a
is.
time not that long ago, I mean, relatively speaking, where had you know, some measure of confidence in the institutions. Certainly, institutions like the FBI and certain aspects of our voting. I was always, you know, skeptical about, kind of cynical about how much cheating went on, but I didn't think it was just widespread and rampant. Now they're just in your face with it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
You know, when they successfully perpetrated the Russia hoax
Right.
on Trump, they just said, yeah, rip back the curtain. We don't care if you see what we're doing.
That's right.
We don't care.
That's right.
You know, but there is some positive coming out of this in these elections. I saw today, and this is trending on TikTok and some other things. There are people all across the country starting these chapters of tailgate Dropbox watchers.
See, I like
they're
that.
going to set up and grill and have a good time
I
and
like
party
that.
down, and they're going to watch these Dropboxes.
I'm not much of a tailgater, but that might be one
Hey.
I would sign up for. I sure
You
would.
got that right.
That is a great idea.
I'll load up the ice chest.
Let's send some citizen observers to
There
the
you
drop by.
go.
Just stand guard at the drop by.
There you
I
go.
participate. I'll do a shift.
Yeah.
Let me know where to go. 'Cause
Yeah.
I'll go hang out at one.
You know, when the state elections agencies will not put the surveillance cameras that are required by law
Right.
to observe these drop boxes.
You know
because that's
something's
what
up.
You know something's up.
Right.
When they won't put the camera, or they mysteriously lost the video.
Well, I know. I love that.
Yeah, you gotta love that. Speaking of lost things, you know, the Department of Defense, Department of Defense, when the Trump regime was changed out, they take back all the cell phones.
Oh, yeah, they wiped them.
They wiped them.
Yeah.
So don't you know that the January 6th committee right now is just in a wad about that?
Right.
I think it's hilarious myself, because first of all, there's nothing there with the January 6th.
That's right.
Even Harvard, as liberal and woke as Harvard is, has issued a report saying, yeah, there's nothing there.
Nothing there.
And it's wasting the American people's time and money.
Well, it's all about distractions, and it's all about trying
That's
to come
exactly
up
what
with
it is.
some straw man pretext for handing down an indictment to Donald Trump, because they do not want him running again.
That's exactly
Yeah.
right. And
What-
it wouldn't surprise me if they were so desperate that old Dementia Joe would write an executive order saying, yeah, Trump can't run again.
Right. That's right.
You
That's
know.
right.
But we got to take a little break. You know, we talk a lot about government lying, you know, agencies lying, these things. When we come back, we're going to talk about the whole climate hoax and the way that they lie. I've got a video that I want you all to watch when we come back from commercial break.
All right.
It's a video showing how they formulate and strategize and create these images that lie to the people.
Right. And data. They sort of
They
cherry
manipulate
pick
the
data. Yeah.
Exactly. And they send this out to politicians, to the media, to schools, to universities, all over. And people look at this and, oh my God, it's horrible. Well, we're going to look at how they come up with those numbers, and you're going to see that, yeah, it's all fraud. So stay tuned. You won't want to miss that. We'll be right back.
Are you afraid to answer the phone because of bill collectors? A Chapter 13 plan can help. Chapter 13 allows people with too many bills to work out a debt repayment plan under federal law. It helps you control your debts instead of your debts controlling you. Chapter 13 stops creditors from harassing you and stops repossessions and foreclosures. It allows you to answer the phone again without fear or worry. Call H. Frank Allen, Attorney at Law, a debt relief agency providing bankruptcy relief under the Bankruptcy Code.
Safe and secure. These two words are simple yet powerful. In order to feel this way, you should know that you have the tools necessary to provide safety and security for yourself and your loved ones. As with any tools, learning how to properly use them is best learned from experts who we know we can trust. Experts who have a proven track record and a commitment to serve and protect. Enroll now in Sheriff Keystone's North Carolina Concealed Handgun Carry class, taught at the CPF Training Center in Rocky Mount. Sheriff Stone utilizes a first-in-class classroom environment and indoor firing range. This ensures a training experience that is welcoming to both first-time firearm students and those with more experience. An attentive staff that takes time to teach students the legal requirements of becoming a permitted concealed carry citizen. In addition, Sheriff Clee Atkinson teaches students situational awareness, self-defense, and skills needed to avoid becoming a victim. As you know, Sheriff Stone and Sheriff Atkinson have committed their lives to serving and protecting. There is a reason Sheriff Stone and Sheriff Atkinson's class book in advance. Come learn from two of the region's most seasoned and professional public servants. Safety and security, two simple but powerful words that can be a part of who you and your family are. Call 252-813-8898. Register today.
Every dad deserves comfort that's just right. And at the Badcock Home Furniture and More Father's Day sale, that's exactly what you'll find. Starting with buy one, get one free recliners. Plus, save hundreds on reclining sofas and sectionals. And get a free foundation with select mattresses, including Sealy. Find the styles and savings that are just right for Dad. Only at Badcock Home Furniture and More. Just right.
All right, we are back, and as I said before the break, we got a little video showing you how they falsify or mislead. I don't know whether this would fall in the misinformation or the disinformation category.
It's disinformation. I mean, the definition of disinformation is purposeful false information to mislead. Misinformation is just they make a mistake.
Okay,
None of this stuff is mistaken.
Well, this is definitely disinformation. So take a look at this video, and when it's through, we'll be back to talk about it a little bit. So take a look at this.
Hello, this is Tony Hiller from RealClimateScience.com, setting the record straight about climate. It's not an easy job committing fraud on the scale which climate alarmists are, so I thought I'd give them some assistance. I've developed some new software which will give them a boost in identifying which critical data they should be hiding. Now let's review the problem which my software will help climate alarmists solve. This is the main page from the part of the National Climate Assessment which went out to journalists and policymakers. This page contains a lot of graphics. Here's one which shows heat waves increasing since 1960. Here's another one which shows Arctic sea ice declining since 1979. And another one which shows wildfires increasing since 1983. And one more which shows sea level rising since 1920. So we have one graph which starts in 1960, another which starts in 1979, another which starts in 1920, and one more which starts in 1983. When you want to mislead people with statistics, picking your start date is very important. First, let's look at the heat wave graph which starts in 1960. They carefully picked a period during the global cooling scare to start their graph so that they could show heat waves increasing over time. And here's the underlying data from the part of the National Climate Assessment which didn't go out to journalists and politicians. This graph is warm spells days, this one is heat wave magnitude, and this one is warmest temperature of the year. As you can see, summers were much hotter in the United States prior to 1960. So by hiding all the data before 1960, they were able to show a little bit of an upwards trend. I overlaid the part of the graph which went out to policymakers over here in this corner on top of the underlying data, and you can see exactly what they did. The red bars are what policymakers saw, and the extreme heat prior to 1960 is what they didn't see. People may consider this sort of behavior to be shocking, but it's actually standard operating procedure for climate alarmists. This graph shows in pink all the data that was hidden from journalists and policymakers. This next graph is the one which shows wildfires increasing in the U.S. since 1983. And this graph of U.S. forest fires from the U.S. Forest Service is the one which didn't go out to journalists and politicians. And you can see why they hid all the data before 1983, because there was a lot more burn acreage in the United States prior to 1983. Burn acreage in the U.S. is down about 80% since the 1930s. This shouldn't be surprising to anyone because it was very hot and dry during the 1930s. Fires are associated with heat and droughts. There's very close correlation between heat waves and burn acreage. This next graphic overlays the graph which went out to journalists and policymakers over here on top of the data which didn't go out to journalists and policymakers. You can see the breathtaking fraud which is going on here. They carefully cherry-picked one year where they could show an increasing trend in wildfires, even though U.S. wildfires are down 80%. And this graph shows in pink all the data that was hidden. Now let's look at the Arctic sea ice extent graph, which starts in 1979. Starting in 1979 makes it look like sea ice extent is decreasing linearly. And now let's look at the data which is being hidden. This graph is from the 1990 Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report. It shows Arctic sea ice extent all the way back to the early 1970s. And as you can see, extent was much lower prior to 1979, and 1979 was the peak. The data was taken from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And here's the accompanying text from the 1990 IPCC report. Satellite observations have been used to map sea ice extent routinely since the early 1970s. The American Navy Joint Ice Center has produced weekly charts which have been digitized by NOAA. And down here is the key sentence. In 1972 to 1975, sea ice extent was significantly less. So they hid the data before 1979 and tried to use the excuse that we didn't have satellite data prior to 1979. But the IPCC report said the exact opposite. Satellite observations have been used to map sea ice extent routinely since the early 1970s. This shouldn't surprise anyone because we went to the moon in 1969. We actually have satellite data from earlier than that. This is from the February 1965 issue of National Geographic. It's a satellite photo of Arctic sea ice looking down on the North Pole. It's pretty clear why the National Climate Assessment is hiding all the pre-1979 data, because it would wreck their linear downwards trend line. Here's one more graphic showing U.S. sea level rising over the past century, as if sea level around the U.S. could somehow be different than it is in the rest of the world. So now let's look at what they're hiding. Sea level has been rising at the same rate for thousands of years. This graph from NOAA is made from data from the tide gauge at Lower Manhattan. It shows that sea level has been rising at a steady rate since the middle of the 19th century. Abraham Lincoln, 2.84 millimeters per year. Teddy Roosevelt, 2.84 millimeters per year. Franklin Roosevelt, 2.84 millimeters per year. Jimmy Carter, 2.84 millimeters per year. And during Donald Trump's first term, it's also 2.84 millimeters per year. In other words, there's no indication that humans have had any impact on the rate of sea level rise. And if we go back even further, we can see that sea level has actually been rising for about 20,000 years. 20,000 years ago, sea level was about 120 meters or 400 feet lower than it is now. Anthropologists believe that during this time when sea level was very low, people were able to walk across from Siberia to North America, and that's how the first humans got here. From about 14,000 years ago to 8,000 years ago, sea level rose very quickly, but since then it's been quite slow. Climate alarmists want you to believe that this 400 feet of sea level rise was all natural, but somehow the last few inches were man-made. It's not easy work for climate alarmists to find the best point to start their phony graphs at, so I've developed some software to help them out. This graph shows the number of days above 90 degrees Fahrenheit at Waverly, Ohio for every year going back to 1895. You can see that there used to be a lot of 90-degree days at Waverly. Let me hover over this point. This is 1936. They had 82 90-degree days in 1936 at Waverly, Ohio. Now let's look at 1895. They had 73 days over 90 degrees in 1895. How about 1930? 1930 also had 73 days over 90 degrees. The year 1900 had 63 days over 90 degrees. So you can see that Waverly, Ohio had a lot of very hot summers prior to the year 1943, but since then summers have been much cooler there. And this diagonal downwards line shows the trend since the 1890s. The trend is about 26 fewer 90-degree days per century at Waverly, Ohio. My video this morning was about Iowa academics misrepresenting the trend in 90-degree days in Iowa. So the last thing which climate alarmists want the public to see is a downward trend in the number of hot days, which is actually occurring over most of the country. So in order to fool the public into believing that hot weather is increasing in the United States, they have to carefully cherry-pick their start date. And my software will help them do that. Let me show you how. I'm going to drag the graph over to the left, and you're going to see the trend line change as I do. Alright, here we go. I'm going to drag the graph, and you're going to see the trend line change dramatically. There we go. It's still going down, still going down, still going down. Whoa, now it's going up. That's exactly what climate alarmists want. So if you want to defraud the public about heatwave trends at Waverly, Ohio, the perfect start date is 1955. And the really cool thing is that with my software, you can do this with any kind of data, any kind of graph. Climate alarmists will be able to find the perfect cheating point for every single data set in the world. I'm open to suggestions what I should name this climate fraud tool, and I think I should charge them a lot of money for it. Going back to being serious, you might have noticed that I've been posting a lot of graphics recently. That's because the software enables me to find all kinds of interesting information which I wasn't aware of previously. I do intend to commercialize it at some point, but that's probably a few months off. So we can see that massive fraud is going on in climate science. Now let's look at some of the reasons why this is happening. Most climate scientists are just keeping their mouths closed because they have to. If they open their mouths, they'd lose their career, they'd lose their income, and they would be thoroughly trashed. But for some, it's the revolutionary mentality. This is an amazing email I got from the American Association for the Advancement of Science. They said, achieving these greenhouse gas limits will require rapid, far-reaching, and unprecedented changes in all aspects of society. This is about overthrowing our government, our freedom, and our way of life. It's more difficult to convince adults of their lies, so they've co-opted children who are very innocent and don't know any better. They had millions of school children out of school today as part of their mass propaganda campaign. The Green New Deal reads like the Communist Manifesto. In 2010, one of the leading officials of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change said, "We redistribute de facto the world's wealth by climate policy. One has to free oneself from the illusion that international climate policy is environmental policy. That has almost nothing to do with environmental policy anymore." The New York Times wants people to panic because they know that panicked people are very easy to manipulate. And the Washington Post also wants people to panic, saying that the world's going to end in a little over 11 years. Same story is from the UN 30 years ago. June 30th, 1989. Grim forecast. A senior environmental official at the United Nations, Noel Brown, says entire nations could be wiped off the face of the earth by rising sea levels if global warming is not reversed by the year 2000. Visit Toto on the web at realclimatescience.com. He's been pulling back the curtain on junk science and propaganda for a long time.
All righty.
I really like that.
Well, I thought that it pretty much explains how these people deceive the public.
Absolutely.
And how this whole climate hoax is perpetrated on the on the globe.
Yeah.
Not just on the American people,
And
because the UN is
unfortunately,
in on it.
And I hate to have to say this, but it also demonstrates how kind of gullible people are. They
Yeah.
don't do any digging.
No.
They just take all this stuff at face value. Why would these people be dishonest?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, speaking of dishonesty, aside from all of the falsification, and I'm going to call it falsification of data, because if you're presenting evidence to sustain or to support a thesis, then you give all the data. We need long histories.
Well,
when you do this, that's falsifying. That's lying.
that's fraud. Well,
It's fraud.
And he characterizes
Yeah,
it as such.
absolutely.
And I like the fact there's a little bit of humor woven in
Yeah,
there, because
yeah.
these people are so shameless.
They are.
That they just assume, well, nobody's even going to look at the other data.
Yeah.
And what it really shows, because you'll notice these various fraudulently constructed graphs are sent to policymakers. Yeah, well, that doesn't speak too well for their intellectual curiosity or thoroughness in investigating these issues either.
I'm going to tell you what, typically politicians can't see any farther than the end of their nose.
I think
or their wet finger sticking up in the air.
Yeah.
That's all they can see.
Well, they're a grifter class.
They're
so,
a grifter class,
yeah.
exactly. And it's not just the climate change research and scientists and agencies that have been lying to us for this long. If you haven't heard about the recent Alzheimer's scandal,
Right, I have actually.
this is a scandal that really is of momentous proportion, and the mainstream media is really just kind of giving it superficial treatment.
Yeah, and there's a reason for that, in my opinion. It's not so much that they aren't sympathetic to the outrage on that particular one issue, as it is that it really demonstrates how so many of these high-profile scientific issues are pursued and reported on. Okay, I think this is a good model. These Alzheimer's revelations. This is a good model and a good thing for people to note, for them to recognize this is how you should view much of what you hear.
Absolutely.
There's a good chance that it's all you know what.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to tell you what. When there's an MD, PhD after a name, it doesn't mean that they're an honest individual.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't mean that they're not biased in some way. It doesn't mean that they don't have huge grants riding on their research.
To me, it's no different than when you see your favorite, say, Fox News personality or something, and you wonder, why are they more vocal about this issue? Because they've got a big salary and a lot on the line, and there's certain things that they come to realize are off limits, and if they want to maintain their nice situation, that's what they have to toe that line.
Yep.
Same thing with these high-level researchers.
Yep. Well, to give you a little background on the Alzheimer's thing. For years, since 2006, since a report came out that was the foundation for 90% of the research on this disease, it's a horrible disease, that research was based on the findings of a researcher who said that this disease is caused by amyloid plaques in the brain.
Right.
Now, they actually went, because it was a team, it wasn't just one single individual.
Yep.
It was a team. They actually falsified the images, the brain scan images, included in this report. This was a peer-reviewed report.
Right.
Peer-reviewed. Now, Matthew Schrag is the one that raised suspicions about this in 2006. All right. And guess who he reported those suspicions to?
I'm just going to go out on a limb. This is a wild guess, literally. So, I mean, I'm going to say, I don't know, Anthony Fauci?
Well, the NIH.
NIH.
Headed by Anthony Fauci.
Okay.
Who promptly turned around and awarded Sylvan Lesney, I guess, awarded him and I do mean multi-million-dollar grants to continue his fraudulent research.
Right.
Now, 90% of the drugs in development out there today are based on that research.
Right.
Which is fraudulent research.
Right.
So this is a prime example of the professional class, the corruption of the professional class, And we have politicians who are supposed to be considered somewhat of a professional class.
Yeah.
Though I consider them in a class somewhat below, the belly of a slithering snake.
If there's such thing as a professional grifter class, they certainly can occupy that.
It's a professional grifter
dubious status.
Absolutely, and they have succeeded in perpetrating this hoax and boosting the hopes of millions of Americans. Treatments.
To sort of expand on what I was saying a few minutes ago, and after hearing more of what you say there, I mean that further entrenches my thought there that you can send people off on a seriously wild goose chase with some data and a little bit of falsified information, and you can have whole armies of well-credentialed and maybe even well-intentioned people chasing after things based on the assumption that the original data is correct or well-founded. And that's what's going on with the climate thing.
Exactly.
You got a lot of these people out there making their whole careers out of chasing after this stuff. Okay.
The CO2 aspect is the basis of the whole global warming
That's
thing.
right. And it's become almost a religion with these folks.
It has. That's right.
And the Church of Science is no different than any other church, frankly. I mean, it's got all kinds of hierarchies and canons and all these things that if you don't adhere to it, it's all under the pretext of the scientific method and scientific purity.
Yep.
But a lot of these folks don't really find. I mean, science itself may have a fairly self-regulating, pure methodology, but as practiced by humans who are liars. I mean, science doesn't lie, but people do.
People do.
Okay.
That's exactly right.
And many of the ranks of high level, especially government-funded science, is full of liars, just like every other institution in this country right now.
Well, when your career, when your research lab, when your study is dependent on funding, on grants being given out, the drive there is to fudge a little bit.
That's right.
If necessary, we're just gonna throw that report
Right.
in the garbage. Let's go with this one because this one looks better.
No different than Galileo going up against the church to point out that the Earth is indeed not the center of the universe or the solar system or whatever the argument there at the time was. But I mean, it's just to me it's evident, and that revelation there, because that's not speculation there. This Alzheimer's scandal is right. This is
hard evidence.
This is a big deal. How many drugs have been created?
Well, I think it said there were 130 in development right now.
Right.
That are based on this, and essentially they're trash.
Well, what was the one that recently was I never can. These new drugs have such bizarre arcane.
Aduhelm.
Yes.
Aduhelm.
Right.
Aducanumab. It
completely demonstrated to be ineffective.
Ineffective, and if you remember, there were several individuals with the FDA who resigned when the approval was issued on that. They said, "Nah, we can't go with that. We're resigning because we don't want any part of this." They knew what was coming down the pike. Now, they didn't blow the whistle, but they knew what was coming down the pike.
Well, I know, and just again, for people listening, how can people get so, who are so smart and well educated, how can they get so bamboozled by this stuff and not see where the falsehoods are? It's very easy to chase down a technical, to try and reach a technical conclusion or go down a technical path based on erroneous information, and you can spend a long time on that. I've been there myself in certain engineering applications, and you can have, if you're starting out from an incorrect premise, which you assume is correct, boy, you can spin your wheels a lot, and you can find a lot of data that supports it, and well, this must be an outlier. Well, let me refine my measurement technique, and this doesn't quite fit, and you have your own biases, and you get to where you've invested a lot of your own personal time in something, and you don't want to find out that you're wrong. It's like being a priest your whole life and finding out there's no God or something. I mean, that would not be something that you'd want to admit to.
That's right.
And I'm not saying that that's the case. I'm saying, but that'd be the psychological equivalent.
Absolutely.
Okay, and that's what these people are involved in. And these climate cultists, I'll call them at this point, that's where they are on this stuff. And yet it's so patently obvious that it's nonsense and that it's really a construct that they've erected to fundamentally transform the West specifically, but the world in general, to an energy scarce environment. That's really what it boils down to. They're trying to make energy scarce sourced from China, solar and wind, and they're really doing it to try and re-engineer the world according to their very, very distorted views of humanity and the ideas of individual liberty. It's very anti-individual.
Absolutely.
The climate movement is one of the most anti-individual movements in a long, long time.
It is, and with that, we got to take a little break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about an organization that is furthering all these hoaxes. The climate hoax, the COVID hoax, all of these things are being pushed by the World Economic Forum. When we come back, we're going to talk about that a little bit, so stay tuned. You won't want to miss that. We'll be right back.
Are you afraid to answer the phone because of bill collectors? A Chapter 13 plan can help. Chapter 13 allows people with too many bills to work out a debt repayment plan under federal law. It helps you control your debts instead of your debts controlling you. Chapter 13 stops creditors from harassing you and stops repossessions and foreclosures. It allows you to answer the phone again without fear or worry. Call H. Frank Allen, Attorney at Law, a debt relief agency providing bankruptcy relief under the Bankruptcy Code.
Safe and secure. These two words are simple yet powerful. In order to feel this way, you should know that you have the tools necessary to provide safety and security for yourself and your loved ones. As with any tools, learning how to properly use them is best learned from experts who we know we can trust. Experts who have a proven track record and a commitment to serve and protect. Enroll now in Sheriff Keystone's North Carolina Concealed Handgun Carry class, taught at the CPF Training Center in Rocky Mount. Sheriff Stone utilizes a first-in-class classroom environment and indoor firing range. This ensures a training experience that is welcoming to both first-time firearm students and those with more experience. An attentive staff that takes time to teach students the legal requirements of becoming a permitted concealed carry citizen. In addition, Sheriff Clee Atkinson teaches students situational awareness, self-defense, and skills needed to avoid becoming a victim. As you know, Sheriff Stone and Sheriff Atkinson have committed their lives to serving and protecting. There is a reason Sheriff Stone and Sheriff Atkinson's class book in advance. Come learn from two of the region's most seasoned and professional public servants. Safety and security, two simple but powerful words that can be a part of who you and your family are. Call 252-813-8898. Register today.
Every dad deserves comfort that's just right. And at the Badcock Home Furniture and More Father's Day sale, that's exactly what you'll find. Starting with buy one, get one free recliners. Plus, save hundreds on reclining sofas and sectionals. And get a free foundation with select mattresses, including Sealy. Find the styles and savings that are just right for Dad. Only at Badcock Home Furniture and More. Just right.
All right, we are back, and I hope everyone remembers the quote from the World Economic Forum in Davos, spring in Davos. Normally they're over there in the wintertime, but they were over there in the springtime this time because of COVID.
Yeah.
Well, their illustrious founder and leader, Klaus Schwab, who is, I would say, is, Hitler reincarnated.
Yeah, I call him Klaus Schickelgruber.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect. Well, he made a statement, and he says, in the future, you'll own nothing, and you'll be happy.
Right.
You'll be happy. And, I thought about that, and I keep thinking about that because it keeps going through my mind. And, our nation, the United States, is based on the principle that we are individually sovereign. Mm-hmm. We are sovereign individuals. We own our own lives.
And our labor.
And no one has the right to take that from us.
And therefore we own the fruits of our labor.
Exactly. Now, when Klaus Schwab and the WEF, the World Economic Forum, say, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy, that means that you will not even own your own life.
Right, but somebody will. He's not saying there's no ownership. He's saying you won't own anything.
Exactly. Someone will own that. So when people talk about communism, socialism, all this stuff, oh, it's for the community. Oh, there's no ownership. Oh, everyone owns everything. Everyone. No, someone owns everything.
That's correct.
Go to China. You're assigned housing. Someone owns that housing.
That's right.
Not you. You're assigned to housing.
Well, I've never understood, the disconnect that people on the left have when it comes to these communist countries. What is communist China other than the biggest monopoly that there is in the world? They own everything. You have very little choice with respect to competition, or choice of products. There is a small oligarchy, a small group of individuals that essentially control and therefore effectively own the means of production. Mm-hmm. There's no fundamental private ownership of property. They wax and wane a little bit on around because it's contrary to human nature, for one thing.
Sure.
I mean, again, all these ideas that the left wants to impose on people, they do have to be imposed, and at the point of a gun, because they're not consistent with human nature.
Exactly.
The genius of the founders is that they created a social system that works not in spite of human nature, but in concert with it.
Right.
Okay, to maximize, the prosperity and the maximum benefit economically to all. Mm-hmm. Or there's always people that fall through the cracks, as they like to say.
Sure.
But fundamentally, a market-based system that allows people to keep the fruits of their labor and engage in voluntary transactions with their fellow citizens. That produces a lot of wealth, as evidenced by this country.
Yeah.
I really get an exercise when people aren't able to see things that are right in front of their doggone noses, and that's one of them.
Absolutely.
The food supply is killing us. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
People live longer than they've ever lived in the history of humankind. There's an inexpensive and plentiful supply of food that is healthy if you eat healthily. You can't just stuff your greasy pie hole with cheeseburgers 24/7 and expect to be healthy. But for the first time in human history, people don't have to figure out where their next meal is coming from. Okay, none of these ideas that the left wants to impose on us are consistent with that.
Right.
And this World Economic Forum is amazing. They really are just right out there saying what they plan to do.
Absolutely. The first thing, they brag about penetrating governments and putting their agents in place.
Right.
And get this, let's see, who is it? Vladimir Putin was a member of the World Economic Forum.
Actually, so is Elon Musk.
Elon Musk, Trudeau, the Venezuelan president, and the list goes on.
How about Greg Abbott down in Texas?
Greg Abbott's a member of the World Economic Forum.
That's right.
In fact, if you go to the World Economic Forum website and search for Greg Abbott, his nice little picture pops up there.
And that's why he hems and haws some when he's pressed on certain issues.
Exactly. And if you saw the video of a amateur journalist asking him about the World Economic Forum, he refuses to answer the question.
Well, to demonstrate how rather, I would say, cleverly and diabolically successful their strategy has been, I watch the business channels a fair amount, and I watch Maria Bartiromo's show in the morning. It's, what's it called? Mornings with Maria. It's their business. Well, every year, they go to Davos and they talk about the World Economic. And I've always recognized it as having a lot of liberal elements to it because they're always talking about climate change and so forth. But I never really realized the extent to which these people are actually marketing this stuff through that actual conference.
Yeah.
Okay. And trying to sell it to people.
Yep.
Okay. But there are some really creepy things that they support.
Ooh,
and
I'll tell you what.
I think it's worth maybe going through a couple of those.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Well, first of all, they're penetrating governments and cabinets, installing their agents in governments. Well, they want to use mind control through sound waves.
Right.
That sounds like some kind of MK Ultra.
It does. That sounds like some kind of Soviet,
But that's what's being discussed over there
by
professional levels. And corporations around the world send people to that every year. High-level corporations. Bill Gates. People like that go to that. They want to sell you pills that contain microchips. So they can track you and
clothes with microchips.
Clothes with microchips. They want to put microchips in all the clothes so that designers can resell their clothes.
Yeah, and that's not it.
Track their clothes. No, it's so that they can track you. They praised the massive lockdowns.
Right.
Oh, lockdowns were celebrated this last Davos convention. They were just praised.
Didn't they actually have a thing where they put out and say, what elements of COVID restrictions would you like to make permanent?
Exactly. They want to develop technology so that your Google timeline not only identifies you by your cellular devices, but by your heartbeat, by your biorhythms, by your biological signature. Let's see, what else do they want to do? Well, of course, they're pushing the Great Reset. We know that. They want to change freedom of speech. They want to redefine freedom of speech,
Right.
much like they redefined recession
Right.
recently. They want to make it close. They want to put smartphones in your body.
Mm-hmm.
They want to put the chips in your body so that you don't have to carry it. You've got it with you all the time. And of course, you'll own nothing and be happy about it. Someone else will be happy because they own everything.
Right, and to expand on that a little bit, what they envision is a world where everything that you purchase or use is a service. Okay, when you get your phone, you don't own it.
Yep.
Okay, and ultimately, they even have ideas where people would sort of hot bunk in a property. In other words, while I'm at work, somebody else is there living and doing their off-work activities, and we sort of all share this. Well, again, I don't think these things will ultimately work.
No.
I think they think they'll work because I
Right.
think they believe they've got the technology now to manage all this. But ultimately, it's so antithetical to human nature
It
that
is.
I think that and these people are so far removed from being connected to their own human nature a lot of times. Have you ever had the experience of being scared so greatly that you actually scream and you realize, gosh, that was an automatic response.
Yeah.
But we're so disconnected from those responses
Right.
because we live in this sort of shelter. Oh, I think that's how they are. I think they're so disconnected from normal human interaction
Yeah,
and
I'd
normal
agree.
activities. They literally think they can impose all these dystopian, futuristic. Go watch the movie THX 1138. There's a good primer on what I think how
Absolutely.
I think these people want to run the world.
Well, I have to agree with Jordan Peterson when he said that, if they were able to accomplish this utopian existence, that people would not want to be there. They would break
Correct.
the system just to get out of that, because that's so against human nature.
Correct.
And unfortunately, we're out of time.
Too bad.
We will be back next Saturday. Hope you have a great week. I'm Robert Crescione.
I'm John Gatsis.
Thanks for watching America in Danger. It will be on the YouTube channel, hopefully by Monday.
Yeah, and don't forget, we do take calls. A little late in the game here today to make that pitch, but the
right.
number's always at the bottom. We'd love to chat with some like-minded people or people who are not like-minded.
That's exactly right. Convince us of your position.
Tell us why we're wrong.
All right. Well, have a great week. We'll see you next Saturday.
Like our new car lineup featuring the roomy Equinox. Fits your lifestyle with security, tech, fuel efficiency, and affordability. Or check out the new Silverado, the truck most popular with first-time and veteran truck buyers. In every department, our knowledgeable and friendly staff is there for you. Born in the business, third-generation owner and manager on site to help you. Don Bullock Chevrolet, Rocky Mount.
Davenport Auto Park has a lot full of late model pre-loved cars. That's right, they're on the lot, fully inspected and ready to go. And there's more on the way. So come on in for the deal of your life on the ride of your life. We have inventory, all kinds of cars for all kinds of folks. We promise you'll find what you're looking for at Davenport Auto Park, or we'll find it for you. Davenport Auto Park, Rocky Mount.
welcome to Cuisine with Jean and Lee Isley. Dr. Lee Isley, the CEO of Nash UNC Hospital, or healthcare system, is our guest. And do you know why I asked you to come?
Well, I appreciate you letting me be here tonight and show you a few of our family favorites and traditions. They're not going to be super complicated, but we enjoy them, and happy to share with your viewing audience.
But I had an ulterior motive.
What
too.
was that?
Ulterior motive was people see you around and they hear you speak at civic groups and whatnot, but they don't really know you because you don't stand up at these civic groups. You are talking about the great changes that have happened in the hospital, but they don't know you have 4 kids. They don't know you have a gorgeous